Hello, Glauber. Lovely to see you. How are you?
Hi, David. I'm very good. Thank you for asking. Such an honor to be here. Such a delight to share this space with you.
Yeah. I've been looking forward to this, and I just wanted to start off by saying when we met in New York City, I think in April at Horizons, it was a really special moment in time to have the whole community there, and we just met in that Athenaeum Psychedelic Assembly in Manhattan, and yeah, my wife was with me, and it was just amazing how we can meet people from different countries there, and there's something really special about that, isn't it? The psychedelic community in particular, but just a meeting of different cultures around the world.
Yes, definitely. I agree. And that's for me as a Brazilian, like one of the first times ever I went to the US and being there with you and also your wife and sharing also songs and ideas and perspectives about the world and about our community. This was so amazing and so impressive and at the same time so cozy. So I really appreciate this.
Mm. I think a lovely place I'd like to start is getting to know you, but first maybe just talk about where you are in the world, like what kind of a reality and kind of space naturally, kind of from an ecosystems and political space. Where are you living, and kind of where did you grow up in life?
Oh, thank you. Yes, David. So now I'm calling in from Santa Luzia and the state of Minas Gerais, Brazil. So I live here in Brazil with my wife, with our kids. So I have three children: Gael, who is 6 now; Guaraci, who is 4; and Yara Maria, she's 2 years old now. And we live in a beautiful place surrounded by mountains and waterfalls. And people believe that Brazil is pretty much related to the forest and the sea because we have also a big coast, but Brazil actually is pretty big. It's huge. So we also have mountains. We have different biomes here in Brazil, and I live in Minas Gerais, which is also known by the food, by the music, by the culture, and also by the Quilombola territories, because Brazil lived a terrible process of colonization. So thousands and thousands of people were enslaved, especially indigenous peoples and black people who were forced to come to Brazil from Africa. But some of these people, they resisted, they survived, and they created these beautiful and strong communities that are called the quilombos, that are alive, they're still here nowadays. And I live in the middle of a quilombo here, so I'm very happy to be able to share this perspective of joy and also resistance. And I'm 37-year old. I'm a sociologist. I have a PhD in sociology. And like millions of Latin Americans and Brazilians, mind was colonized. So nowadays I talk about psychedelics, I talk about decolonial perspectives, but actually was raised just watching movies and Hollywood things, and it's this was very strange feeling being brought up, learning to refer to a culture that isn't wasn't my own. So my references were like Spider-Man, Coca-Cola. I use it to hate myself, to hate my town, my culture, and that's one of the reasons I'm very grateful for having the opportunity to meet, to encounter psychedelics and ayahuasca in special, because in a very interesting way, when I met ayahuasca, when I went to the Amazon, my mind was decolonized. So I can tell that psychedelics decolonized my mind. And after this happened to me, I became another person. It literally saved my life, saved me from myself, and saved me also from colonization. So now I'm committed also to try to support other people, to try to respect this ancestrality related to ayahuasca, sacred plants, and so that's why we live in a community here. And yeah, so this is in short, my place in the world, living in Brazil, but trying to spread the seeds of decolonial perspectives on psychedelics, also to challenge a single narrative about these substances, because actually the world is, although we think the world is small, it's actually big, and it's infinite regarding the possibilities, the different cultures, the perspectives that we have. And I use it to be very shy. So the first time, although nowadays I go to the US, I offer lectures, I speak in conferences, but the very first time I went to the US actually was in 2022. So it's also very recent for me. I'm still learning English, but I'm committed to build bridges and dialogues about these perspectives on sacred plants. And as you mentioned before, on creating bonds of kinship and relationships.
That was amazing. Thank you, Glauber. Really awesome to meet you. There was a young Glauber with Spider-Man and Coca-Cola, and now there's the contemporary Glauber. So, what kind of an identity or a reality have you grown into or evolved into? And maybe from a metaphysical perspective, where was that Glauber and has that Glauber always existed? And how can we kind of relate to this from a theoretical perspective around the potential of psychedelics to bring healing, decolonization, and revelation of self and of, some bigger universal reality, perhaps. So if that fits in with your own personal experience, I'd love to hear about it.
Amazing. Yes, I would say that we, yes, that the world is very beautiful. Actually, life is very beautiful, and this beauty is also related to resistance. And I was born in a very small town that is called Ouro Fino, the fine gold, and it's very conservative, very Catholic. And this is something I would like to share to the public here, to the friends that are listening to us right now. Something that is important, it's to avoid romanticization about other cultures, about other peoples, about ourselves. Because also because real life is much better than perfect idealizations about life or how life should be. So although a lot of people, they idealize the global south, they idealize Brazil, they idealize the Amazon rainforest and ayahuasca traditions and everything related to that. Actually, psychedelics are something very, very stigmatized in Brazil. So psychedelic communities, psychedelic traditions, they are all very small minorities in Brazil. So this is also, Brazil is actually very conservative in general, and very religious. And nowadays we have a lot of fundamentalists when we are talking about religious perspectives as well. So Brazil is a very intriguing country because we also have a lot of beautiful cultures in Brazil. Brazilian music. It's not only about one single music style. We have dozens different styles. We have hundreds of different languages in Brazil. But we are born and we are raised and we are taught to be something else, to really, look forward to understand European cultures, European philosophers, to watch US TV shows and everything. And I think this, from this more metaphysical perspective, this is an invitation to all of us. And I think this is also related to the psychedelic experience, to discover ourselves, to really get to know ourselves. And this is something that I learned also in the sociological school when I was studying sociology. I really liked an author called Émile Durkheim from France, because Émile Durkheim was like the opposite to the standard mystical new age guy from the white west. Like, in order to understand ourselves, it's not enough to meditate, it's not enough to go inwards. Actually, we need to go outward, out of from ourselves. We need to see other cultures. We need to learn. We need to escape from the world that we live, because then, uh, understanding better the relationships, understanding better, and having the possibility to look to other cultures, then we can have a perspective about who we are. Then we can, for example, I just realized that I am a Brazilian, no matter what I do. When I went out of Brazil, then I saw that I was recognized as a Brazilian, as a Latin American. So this movement of trying to learn from different cultures actually helped me a lot to understand who I am. So I think this is something very, very interesting from this theoretical or philosophical framework. It's to acknowledge difference, because we are used to believe and to say that we are all together, we are all the same, we are in the same boat, we're all very beautiful psychedelic family or psychedelic community. But something I've been learning from indigenous perspectives is that this universalism is actually something that doesn't connect us, on the contrary, separate us. Because if we are not able to acknowledge that actually we are very different, then it's difficult to be together. So when I was yeah, still a child, I saw in a Brazilian TV show a very, very sensationalist TV show that was talking about ayahuasca, and specifically about the Santo Daime religion. And they were saying something like, yes, there's this cult in the Amazon where people go and they drink this hallucinogenic brew and they dance for around 12 hours non-stopping, and they are all dancing, they're all laughing, and it's very dangerous. And then I said, wow, this is the place I would like to be, you know. And then eventually, a friend of mine that was a Rastafari, he met ayahuasca, and he was a fundamentalist Rastafari. And he came to me and said, I met the blood of Jesus. For true, I met the blood of Jesus. You should go there. And I was very impressed about this. And then I eventually had a chance to drink ayahuasca. I was 21 at that time, and it was amazing. It just changed my perspective about myself, about the others. I was reconciled with my family, with myself, with my culture, with being a Latin American. And this was very magical also, because I had this experience of being alive. And in being alive, I also had this experience of being, of carrying my whole ancestrality, because this generation actually is the fruit, is the effect, is the result of the struggles, of the fights, of the resistance of thousands of previous generations that lived without us. So this sense of belonging came to me. And more than that, this sense of life, of being alive, which also means creativity. So, and this is something interesting about Brazil, David, because we sometimes we talk about this in Brazil, like the next Einstein, the next Foucault, the next Tesla, Newton is probably going to be born in Europe or in the US, but the next specialist in the next Foucault, Newton, and so on is going to be born in Latin America, because we are taught to not being creative, to not trust ourselves here, to imitate others. And ayahuasca brought me this sense and this feeling of being capable of making a difference, at least in my own life, at least in my family's life. So I do believe that something very important regarding society and being in this world is to recover the capacity to think, to be free, and to also to make mistakes. because if we're talking about religious minorities, if we're talking about social minorities, mistakes are forbidden. And then we have a lot of social prejudice, we have a lot of social stigma. And ayahuasca brought me this sense of openness to the otherness, but openness to myself. So yeah, so I think, yes, from this theoretical perspective, I do believe that knowing who we are, it's an ongoing process, and it's important to be humble enough to be open to learn, to be open to hear different voices, invisible voices, including our own. So that's my, in short, my path in life, this capacity or this ongoing learning process about who I am, how I do relate to each other, and how to empower myself enough to be myself. So this is something I do like about psychedelics. It's not only about molecules. It's not only about substances. It's about creating relationships, and it's about having the opportunity and the possibility to change the perspectives. And once, just concluding this, once Ailton Krenak, an indigenous Brazilian philosopher, was asked about life, what is life? And then he answered, life is a cosmic dance. And I really like this perspective of life being a cosmic dance, because we are taught on how to save the world. Now we need to save the Amazon. We need to save indigenous peoples. We need to use psychedelics to save people, to save everybody. We are always looking for this new panacea. And then when we are too much committed to saving someone, we forget about dancing. And this is, you know, something I would like to learn and learn it again, and how to dance instead of saving the world, dancing with the world, dancing with nature, with all the living beings, because we are also nature. So um, this path towards acknowledging that I am nature, I'm also nature, and I have the right to be here as I am, is something that I think it's pretty much related. And this is interesting because I talked about differences, I talked about how to be connected. It's important to acknowledge differences. And when we acknowledge difference, when we know that every single of us is actually different from each other, then we can find something similar in all of us. That is this interbeing. We are all part of nature, dancing this amazing life together.
Beautiful. Thank you, Glauber. Glauber, there was a lot that you just shared that was beautiful to hear. A couple of things that definitely resonate inside of me is around your personal process of revealing who you are and it being a dance. And that some of that needed to be this individuation of what you are not. And some of that is like a decolonizing piece around the culture that you're growing up in, or just the default assumptions about reality and what is good, what is supreme and superior. And a second piece I'm hearing as well is that part of that process of revealing your true self is accepting that some of that requires activism, creativity, and some kind of accountability to others, not just to self. And it's quite a nuanced angle that you're putting forward here, because it's not the simple like we are all the same. There's this great universal creator, and we're all part of this amazing, miracle of life, which is true. That is true. But we have to go kind of deeper. Like, how do we really sit with the differences, celebrate and distinguish and understand and appreciate all the kind of minute, infinite not separations, but I think the uniqueness of us all. And that's where relationship comes into it, like true relating to each other as cultures, as religions, as beings. And yeah, there's a lot of difference now. There's a lot of uniqueness now. And now we're going to talk about parenting because I know that's a big thing for you. So I don't know if your kids' kind of voices are going to be heard from the background, but in my earphones I can hear your kids in the back, and I love that because
Mhm.
this is normal. Like often when we're doing podcasts, it's like, okay, we need silence. We've got to be, super like professional and clinical and, perfect. No, let's be real. Let's be normal. Let the kids scream. Let's dance. Let's sing. Let's be real. And I feel like that's part of your answer as well, is psychedelics have this potential to heal PTSD and trauma and addiction and all of that stuff, yeah, you know? And they have this other piece that they help us dance. They help us
Mhm.
reveal who we are and love ourselves and connect with people, be better husbands and parents as well. And so there's just a beautiful kind of simplicity about that. It's radical because it gives us this challenge of like revealing who's the real David, who's the real Glauber, and how do I know and how do I tune into that? I can't rely on a doctor or a therapist or a curandero for that. It's something imperceptible. So maybe I could ask that as a question for you, Glauber. When you're working with people in sacred ceremonies with ayahuasca or before or after, what kinds of ways do you help people to open up to experiencing their true self or being open to connecting with, reality or different parts of themselves that might be underneath the surface that they may not yet have fully kind of absorbed and immersed themselves into recognizing?
Wow, amazing. Yeah, so just a few comments before proper answering your questions. I I do believe that being a parent is one of the most psychedelic experiences we can have in life, and it's something so magical and yet also so challenging. And my wife actually is supporting me a lot and teaching me a lot, and because it's also, I think, we need to discuss also gender roles and family traditional family roles in our field, in our life. And I am humble enough to acknowledge that being a man that was raised in a conservative society is also something that bring a lot of complicated things. And something that my wife actually taught me is how caring about people, it's actually a very, very efficient and strong antidote against toxic masculinity. So my children, because we usually in our Western society we see children as projects, ongoing projects, and for example, we have this very ridiculous question that we ask children like, "What do you want to do when we grow up?" Like it's not even a who questions. What you are going to do? What you are going to be? And we forget about acknowledging children as full human beings already. So they already are. And also, besides being also students, children are also very, very good and important teachers. So I've been learning from my children a lot, and also being healed by my children, because when I see them and I see them making questions and I see them like amazed about life, I have this feeling that psychedelics also can support us towards our inner child, towards this experience of being alive, and not only following rules, following procedures, following protocols. We can also experiment. We can also have joy. We can also have fun. So having the capacity of being happy, of joy, is also something that I think it's really, really, really powerful. And regarding and this power of freedom is something I believe we need to take very seriously. So when we are talking about ceremonies, when we are talking about psychedelic assisted therapy, a lot of things emerge how to protect people, how to create safe containers, safe spaces, how to have boundaries that can protect also people, and how to have good screening, good preparation, good facilitation, good integration. But something that is really important and that is present in all of this is to acknowledge people's singularity, people's difference. And that's why training is something very important. It's not only about goodwill. For example, as a Christian, a person should not talk about Jesus Christ or Bible in a psychedelic experience when they are offering this experience to people who are not Christians. So my point here is it's important to have cultural sensitivity. It's important to understand how social markers they also matter when we are talking about people's experience. So we need to take into account gender, we need to take into account religion, spirituality, science, race, ethnicity. So it's not something very easy. And I do like some perspectives, and I do respect a lot of people on both sides in the academic, biomedical model, and also in the traditional shamanic, ancestral cosmovision as well. And something I like is, for example, this idea of sitting, not guiding, when we are talking about the biomedical model. It's something that I do like is also the respect that traditional worldviews they have for people's visions. They don't distrust people's visions as something that is not real. So I do believe that the core of this question is how to support people, how to help people, and to understand that these plants, these fungi, actually they have. And now I'm going to use an anthropological term. Uh, they have a higher intelligence. They have agency. So it's also, and there is something I do like, David, about some provocative discussions on the very notion of psychedelics. A couple of indigenous scholars, they brought this discussion facing the very idea of psychedelics that would bring this idea of mind manifesting, and they use the term kindalic that would bring the idea of kinship manifesting. So this is something that I think provoke us to expand, to really expand our mind in order to understand that it's a relationship. So it's not only about the facilitators. Actually, the facilitators are just one piece, although a very important one, in the whole configuration, in the whole horizon. So there are also the plants, so there are also the psychedelic substances, so there are also the fungi, there are also the culture, there are also the music. And I would say that as far as we can, it's really good to be interested in people's background, in people's lives, in people's culture, in order to be able to facilitate this process. So something that I do like to say, to do, is also to try to expand our notions on preparation, on facilitation, and on integration in order to be trained and flexible enough to offer the best service that we can, you know?
I love what you were just sharing there around kinship manifesting, because it's similar to the term that's used in Western kind of academic research of nature relatedness and kind of eco-psychology. Is that, yeah, we're building this relationship with nature, or that we are indeed part of nature, revealing that underlying belonging to nature. I also love that what you're talking about, Glauber. It's combining both the relational piece of working with individuals and the macro piece around society and politics and culture, and kind of deconstructing that. It's always great when those two are together, and I guess that's part of what you're saying. Really, is it's really important that we don't just look at one of these things. Like we can't just look at policy and, psychedelics are inherently political. They really are, because it involves consciousness and choice and reality. But it's really important. Part of what you're saying, I believe, is that we have to continue looking at the individual and the collective, and the sense of, the political being inherently a radical part of our psychedelic use. If it's just to heal my anxiety, okay, that's great, that might be enough, but it may well open up more than that. It may well be that our psychedelic experience doesn't just do exactly what we want it to do, it does more than that. And it may well at times create the sense of tension with our culture that we live in, or with a sense of community or place that we have. And that's totally, where integration and preparation come into it. I want to just ask a question about the work you do around ayahuasca in particular. So obviously there's other plants that have psychedelic properties, and there's breath work, and there's, toad and psilocybin. What is it with ayahuasca that speaks particularly for you as a Brazilian man, or as someone has a lot of experience with it? And then from there I'd like to start to explore, why do you think ayahuasca is becoming this kind of global phenomena? How we are seeing this globalization of ayahuasca culture and usage around the world. But first, for you personally speaking, what is ayahuasca, and how are you kind of working with ayahuasca in relationship over the years since you were 21 and you first had that initial meeting?
Amazing. Yes, and a professor that I had at university helped me to understand this, because I had this professor that I loved. I really admired him. And after several years, I met him again. And then we were talking about many topics. And eventually, this topic of ayahuasca emerged. And he wanted to try ayahuasca for the first time. And then he came to my place. He tried it and he said something. Yes, ayahuasca saved you, Glauber, because he knew me before ayahuasca. Boy, I drank a lot of alcohol. I had a lot of problems about feeling a lost soul in this world. And ayahuasca gave me meaning, purpose, and a sense of community, of belonging. And the way this happened, it was very interesting and kind of mystical and personal. But I am happy to share that eventually I was a little concerned about my health and drinking a lot of alcohol and not having purpose in life. And then I started practicing sports, more specifically mixed martial arts. So I became a professional kickboxer, which was something that helped me. But then I was using steroids and a lot of also not really good things. And then I had my first ayahuasca experience. And they invited me to participate in the process making of ayahuasca. So we need to clean the leaves, we need to smash the vines. And two things happened. The first one was that they invited me to join the group to smash the vines, and we use wood hammers to smash the vines. And I was feeling that I was very strong using steroids and being a kickboxer and everything. And I saw those little guys, like adolescents, very thin. And I said or thought something like, I'm going to do this myself, the strongest man here in the place, and this kind of thing. And after 10 minutes, I was knocked out by ayahuasca, David, and I fell down, and they needed to carry me and to support me. And then I realized something that I could translate into kickboxing was not my struggle, was not my fight, was not my martial arts. Actually, I had something much deeper that was related to fighting for the right reasons, for civil rights, for indigenous rights, for my family, for myself to rescue myself, my identity, my sense of being happy in life, of enjoying life, of being connected to my family, my parents, my sister, my community. So this was very powerful. And the next day I quit kickboxing, and I had this huge purging because I also suffered from gastritis, and I think this is also something related to my mental health. And so purging is also something I do
Mm.
respect a lot regarding ayahuasca, because this can release a lot of emotions, and this really supported me. So this was something very impactful and was related to divine. But there is also something related to the leaves, because in this church that I went, that was a Santo Daime church, people need to clean every single leaf that is going to be in the pot with the vine to actually become eventually ayahuasca. And I was, uh, yeah, feeling like a little bored. Like, we need to clean every single leaf, but we have so many things to do in life, and I need to work, I need to study, I need to do research. And then the facilitator came to me and said, "You know what? If you can pay attention, and if you can respect this very little and fragile leaf, so you might be more prepared also to care and to love all the other aspects in your life." So this
Mm.
was very meaningful and very powerful to me, and I learned how caring, how loving is related to our time, is related to patience also. So this was my very first week of ayahuasca experiences, and really, really helped me. So is also, and it wasn't related to something that people told me or that people answered to me. And this is also the way I like to work with the medicine nowadays. I became eventually a member of the Santo Daime tradition, and in 2015, alongside my wife, we co-created and we opened Santo Daime Church. And nowadays we lead Santo Daime legal and tax exempt church here in Brazil. So we look forward, we look after a community of around 50 people now in Brazil. So we hold ceremonies every weekend, basically. And in almost 10 years, we held more than 500 ceremonies, and not only
Mm.
in Brazil, but also in the US, in Iceland, in other countries and places as well. But the very fundamental thing is that this answers, this meaning uh, was found inside me. Of course, the culture, setting, the facilitators were really important and very helpful. And this is something we need to acknowledge. And that's why I would add a couple of comments in the famous Terence McKenna quote that says, "Stop following gurus, following the plants." It's also important to follow cultures, cosmovisions, to not to be alone. It's not only about
Mm.
ingesting something; it's about creating relationships, and that's something I'm really interested in, David. I do believe, because when you go to the Instagram, and you see a lot of answers, a lot of information, and if you want a quick answer, we go to Google, and there's this famous saying also here in Brazilian communities, like this guy, this like, it's an archetypical new age guy that knows everything about ayahuasca. The only thing that is missing is to ingest, and
Yeah.
so when we are accelerating all this process of having answers, of having healing, and I do believe that Earth is rotating too fast. So we need to make the Earth rotate slowly. And in order to do that, it's important also, maybe instead of having answers all the time, to have good questions. And someone that inspires me is the French thinker Bruno Latour, that in the middle of the pandemics, that was something terrible, but okay, here we are. So maybe we can have good questions in order to not, go back to the state that we were living in, but to create a better world, better environment. So Bruno Latour, in the pandemic's time, offered a couple of questions that could support us to co-create better and safer spaces. So that's something that really inspires me, how to have good questions, how to bring good questions. So I do not like to give people solutions or answers, or I would rather be grateful if I can support people in having the good questions, in having the freedom and the safety that can let them ask the right questions, let them have their own experience with plant medicines. And regarding the psychedelic field, I think this can also be a very interesting key. How can we bring good questions to the stage, you know?
Amazing. Thank you, Glauber. I really love the importance of questions, and maybe when you were cleaning those leaves individually, each little leaf is important. Like, it has a purpose. Like, this is part of the medicine, but this is part of the process of preparing yourself. And there's almost like we are filled with these questions inside of us, these potentialities, these complex contradictions almost. And they're almost like a little leaf inside of us that if we just give it enough time, if the world could just spin a little bit more slowly, then we could find these little leaves inside of us and go, oh, here you are, little leaf. Let me just spend some time getting to know you. Oh, see how you're unique, clean you. And that's, wow. And then that brings up questions, and that brings up relationships and intimacy. So yeah, I love how, yeah, any other thoughts that are popping up for you there?
Yes, that's amazing. Thank you for bringing that, because this comments, because I'm sure now I can tell, like for sure, because I think we are always also looking for big things, like big gatherings, big conferences, big journeys, big trips. But in my case, the very single leaves of my life taught me much more than the big and the great happenings, you know. And you just remembered me of a very interesting experience I had uh, here in my place when we ingested actually mushrooms. This was a mushroom experience that also was very meaningful to me. And then I went to the woods and I saw this big tree. There is a very local tree here that is named um, Macauba, that is a palm tree. And then I was amazed by nature. And then I saw this tree and I saw this little insect. And I was like, this was my crazy instinct. I wanted to touch the insect. But then when I was up to do this, I looked at that insect and I had this feeling that the insect was just teaching me something and saying like, hold on, wait a minute, I'm here before you. And this is my land. So I have this sense of being the owner of the land. But then I had this feeling, no, no, you are not the owner. You are here too. But take a moment, look, look around, meditate, pay attention. And then I saw another insect, and then another insect, and then I saw a lot of flowers in that palm tree. And then I realized that a whole ecosystem that was there before me, that was there independent of me, was there already, alive. And then I just chose to be part of that too, instead of, or touching everything, changing everything, making a difference. And this was very healing to me as well.
Beautiful. That was a change, a reframing of your perspective there. That was psychological flexibility in action in nature.
Definitely, yes.
So, part two of my question from before about ayahuasca was the globalization of it. And so, you and I did a webinar about this before, particularly looking at Santo Daime, and then you also taught on our Navigating Psychedelics course around this subject and holding space. And then you're also teaching in our Vital course around this and other subjects. So one of the things I really think are fascinating that you've written about and spoken about, Glauber, is around, in a sense, ayahuasca as a diaspora, as a force of kind of counter-globalization, being exported to the global north from the global south. And when you first spoke about that, and I heard it, I found it quite a radical idea, and it really is. It's a counteraction, and particularly with Santo Daime, it's a very, very popular, cultural, religious model that has become incredibly, popular in I don't know how many countries. But there's something happening here, um, quite clearly. Like there's a pipeline of spiritual teachings, of spiritual practices, and routines and rites of passage in sacred ceremony from the global south to the global north. Ayahuasca is now in every single country in the world, I probably think, apart from Antarctica. Literally here where I live in Israel, like literally every weekend, there's probably at least 20 to 30 ayahuasca circles, in every country. So how did this happen, and why is this happening? And is it good? Is it bad? Or how can we measure whether it is good or bad, or how do we make it better? These are some of the questions I think we could move into. I know there's lots there, but just talk to us first about this concept of counter-globalization and the diaspora of ayahuasca medicine from the global south to the global north. What does that mean to you?
Amazing. Thank you, David. I think this is a very important, although also complex question. And I would move a little bit from uh, deciding if this is good or bad to try to understand this process, because it's also a matter of acknowledging diversity and the diversity of perspectives. So, for example, I have a friend, an indigenous friend that is from Apurina people. His name is Francisco Apurina, and according to him, it's very bad that these medicines are being expanded because people don't know the traditions, they don't know how to deal with these plants, and actually we have neo-extractivism, neo-colonialism, and according to him, it would be better for these plants and also for the consumers if these plants could just stay in the Amazon. On the other hand, I also know other people and other chiefs. For example, my friend Chief Doechiro Tucano from the Yepamasan people that have a very beautiful and strong ayahuasca history as well. I don't know if you know that, David, but the scientific name for the ayahuasca vine, Banisteriopsis capi, was actually stolen by the Richard Spruce, the ethnobotanist from the Tucano culture, because he went to the Amazon and the Tucano, they name ayahuasca Capi, and then he saw Tucano, he saw other traditions there, and the traditional name was Capi, and he just used that, appropriated without consent and everything. But Doechiro Tucano says that it's good what's happening, because also Latin America, Brazil especially, leave process of colonization. Still nowadays, that is very, very complicated. So missionaries from Christian traditions, they actually forced many indigenous traditions to lose, to forget about their traditions. So this interest that Global North, for example, has towards these medicines can also support, in some cases, indigenous peoples to revitalize, to revive these practices, these traditions. So Doechiro supports, of course, with also criticism and important reflections, but supports this movement. So we have different perspectives. There are also some people, some pajés, they do believe that these plants, they have personhood, they have agency. So if they are there, if for example people are planting ayahuasca now in Hawaii, it's because these plants wanted this to happen. So according to this interesting perspective, human beings would also actually be tools for these plants to travel abroad, to be globalized. So we have different perspectives. Every single of them has interesting insights to help us to think about it. But regarding, for example, Santo Daime, we have also a very, this is impressive actually, because many people in the global north, they have the not accurate idea that Santo Daime must be very popular in Brazil. But Brazil is a country with more than 200 million people. And according to research Santo Daime members are just 20,000. So it's a very, very, very small minority that still nowadays suffers from a lot of stigma, prejudice, and so on. And but Santo Daime is present in approximately, according to the research I did with some collaborators too, in approximately 50 countries, which is one of the most successful cases of Brazilian religions that expanded abroad. And we have a lot of possible reflections on that. And but I can mention a few of important key points on that, although this is much bigger and could go in depth. But something that is interesting is the protagonism of the global south in the world landscape. So now we can see also a lot of different global south traditions, religions, kinds of cultures and spiritualities that are living this process of diaspora. Talking about Brazil, we can also, on the other hand, see that the evangelical churches are also living a very huge diaspora. We can also see capoeira, the Brazilian martial art, that is also present in many different countries. If we are talking about Mexico, we can see the danza conchera, for example, being expanded as well. So this is related to a geopolitical horizon that we and context that we live nowadays. That is also related to this search for meaning in life, because this is an interesting discussion because of, for example, as a sociologist, I read a lot of the classicals like Max Weber, Emile Durkheim, Karl Marx, and so on and so on, and they all had this belief in common that was not very scientific, although was read and offered as science, that eventually secularization, and the disenchantment of the world would be successful. And people would not need religion and spirituality anymore, or this would at least change dramatically. But people still need to have meaning, to have purpose, to understand, to be able to explain the world. So in these very uncertain times that we are living in, the search for meaning, the search for community, the search for purpose, it's strongest than ever. So this is also an important way to explain ayahuasca globalization. People, they are looking, they're eager for having meaning in life, for explaining also life, because and this can explain also other things. For example, a topic that I like very much is theories of conspiracy, like and this is also a way to decrease the complexity of world. So there are good ways to do that, and psychedelics can really help us to try to explain, to try to have a meaning, purpose, and and also spirituality and also traditions. So I think this also responds to this need that we all have to be grounded. And this is also related to a new enchantment of the world, if you are going to talk in sociological terms. But this can be very interesting. This recovery, this rescue of magic, of the transcendence, of metaphysics, of a way to explain the world. And but this can also be complicated. For example, the romanticization of indigenous and the idealization of indigenous practices that, in some cases, can dehumanize indigenous peoples, indigenous cultures, villages, and so on. So there are many complex relationships, including economic ones, including the protection and sustainability of the forests. So it's a big thing, but also something that can also connect ayahuasca to the psychedelic resurgence or psychedelic renaissance, and also the all the psychedelic research we can see today, that is healing. So people need healing. So we are living, and this is something interesting that also can expand a reflection on depression and many other terrible things that we see millions of people suffering nowadays. So, if we take, for example, the case of depression, so depression, it's although we treat people individually, it's clear that depression is not something individual. The roots of the problem, if we see millions and millions and millions of people suffering nowadays, it's something related to our society, something related to our civilization. So people need healing, and ayahuasca and other sacred plants and psychedelics, they emerge now as a very strong and interesting possibility to alleviate people's suffering as well. So these are just a couple of reasons why ayahuasca is now expanding very much. Besides others, that is related also to the ceremonial aspect of ayahuasca that can be very meaningful, strong, safe if it's carried out properly, and also the effects of ayahuasca in the body, and the research that we already have, the legal right that people have to drink ayahuasca in places like Peru and in Brazil, because here in Brazil ayahuasca is legal. Pregnant women, children, they can take ayahuasca. So this political discussion is also something that is interesting if you are trying to understand this.
I just want to clarify. In Brazil, did you say they women, pregnant women and kids can or cannot use ayahuasca at the
We
moment?
can, we can.
They
This is
can.
something very, yes, in Brazil, ayahuasca is legal through a resolution that was signed in 2010. And after decades of debate, regarding children, for example, parental rights were stronger than the war on drugs and the prohibitionist discourse. So if parents they can choose the religious identity of their kids, they can also decide if kids they can ingest the sacrament, the plant medicine. Although when we this is important also to clarify, when we see ayahuasca traditions in Brazil, uh, kids they're just going to drink small or symbolic doses, drops to be part of the community. So this is also, I would say that we have at least three pillars that are related to ayahuasca expansion. That would be healing, that would be community or culture, and education as well. So it's important also to understand this context. And pregnant women, the same thing. And we have also beautiful traditions in indigenous settings, and also including the Santo Daime. I also wrote a piece about it alongside my wife about the tradition of childbirth in ayahuasca traditions. So, pregnant women also have the right to drink ayahuasca, although usually they only drink symbolic, smaller doses than the average consumption.
Thank you. I think now is a perfect time, if it's okay, for you to talk about the birth of your third child, your daughter, Yara Maria, because I know you've written about that. And particularly, we're talking about ayahuasca as it applies to parenthood and being a mum and childbirth as well. But we're also talking about it from the perspective of developing a relationship with ourself and the ability to hold space within ourselves and for others, in a sense, to create sacred space. So when I read the story about the birth of Yara Maria, it was like, wow, the ability to create sacred space and to hold space without, medicine, because in a sense, it was amazing. So if it's so, do you feel okay talking about that with us?
Yes, definitely. It's more than okay.
Beautiful.
I'm happy to. And also, you remembered me of something that is also important regarding ayahuasca expansion, that is connection. So this sense, this possibility of connection to perceive ourselves, to realize that we are also part of nature, And interesting information, David, is that in some indigenous language, there's no such a word like nature. So this differentiation, this separation, is something that is related also to modernity and modern Western philosophy that goes back to, for example, Thomas Hobbes and so on. But I'm telling you this because a connection was something really strong to me and my family when we are talking about our lives here. And I can briefly also mention the birth of my other children, because they were all born in a psychedelic culture, in an ayahuasca tradition in the Santo Daime church. And in the first case, just to let people know and to be clear about it, it's not a matter when you're talking, for example, about psychedelic parenthood, when you're talking about freedom of consciousness, when you're talking about bringing families to the discussion, we are not talking about offering psychedelics to children. This is a very bad reductionism of the debate. It's much more. It's much deeper. So in the case of my oldest son, we had prepared a whole ritual here, and we had this dream to have a childbirth at home and everything. But my wife had a problem. She started bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and bleeding, and then we needed to go to the hospital, and it was something huge. And eventually, my son needed to stay a few days in the hospital. So, where ayahuasca enters here, ayahuasca, the community, people here together, people were praying, people were, yeah, in the same purpose of supporting us, supporting our family. This really helped us to deal with that situation. And eventually, after a couple of days, my son was okay, and it was just amazing. And then my second son, so my oldest son is Gael. He's really really happy. He's a very smart and intelligent child, and maybe I can bring them in a couple of minutes if you allow me just to say hello. And then we had another son, Guaraci, and he was born in a hospital. But we talked to the doctors before. We said to them, we are part of an ayahuasca tradition. You know that in our tradition we have this possibility of childbirth with ayahuasca. So, what do you think about having a little bit of ayahuasca here at the hospital with us? And it was they had a very good team, and they agreed, and it was just magical. It
Wow.
was a very standard childbirth in a hospital, but the team allowed us to bring a bottle of ayahuasca. So my wife took just a little spoon of ayahuasca, very symbolic. And this symbolism brings the whole culture, brings this sense of identity, of empowerment. Okay, we are here, it's our time. Let's leave just enjoy this moment. I also drank a little spoon of ayahuasca, and then we sung a couple of songs, and then Guaraci was born, and it was very beautiful. In the case of my daughter, her name is Yara Maria, was very challenging, very interesting as well, because we had hired a professional team of doctors and nurses to support us at home. That was the original idea. And my wife was pregnant for 28 weeks, so we were not expecting yet my daughter to be born. But for some reason, she decided that was the right time. And then it was very synchronous, actually, because I was in a ceremony. My wife was at home sleeping, and then it was a ceremony to celebrate children. This was very very interesting, and we were singing songs to celebrate children and the beauty and the joy related to life. And in these ceremonies, we say "Viva as crianças." That could be translated by as "Hail to the children." And then during the ceremony, my wife started entering in labor. And then she called me, and then I went back home because we were not legal here in this land yet. And then we started calling the team, calling the doctors, but for some reason they decided they were to do another thing. They were actually working in another town, and they told us they couldn't make it. They couldn't assist us. They couldn't come in on time. And then were just us there. And then they said something like, "Calm down. It's going to take a lot of hours." But my wife knew this would be much faster than the others. And then she just decided we need to go to the hospital. We need to go to the hospital right now. But the hospital was far away from the place we were living at that time, around 1 hour and a half. And then, but my wife is also, yeah, also an ayahuasquera, and she wanted to say her prayers. So I started driving, and then she started a ceremony. We call it a ceremony because it's ritualizing life. It's not that we brought people to sit and drink ayahuasca, but she said her prayers and saying something like, "Now we're opening the space for the childbirth of our daughter, of Yara." And I was driving, and then she brought also this little bottle of ayahuasca that is a friend, that is a, this that carries this feminine energy. And then yeah, she Yara was born actually. And then my wife said, "Oh, she's going to be born now." I said, "No, no, 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 wait a little bit, wait a little bit." And then driving fast, then it was interesting because then we were downtown, like under a bridge. And then Yara was up to be born. But then my wife said, "No, no, no, not under the bridge. Just go forward. Just 1 more minute." And then 1 minute later, my daughter was born. Just I was there, me, my wife, and Yara was born, and I was the midwife,
Wow.
and I was terrified. And but my wife, because she, then this is the power of believing. It's not about mystifying things, but when we believe, when we feel confident, when we feel grounded, when we feel that we have a purpose, our experience they're meaningful, then we are stronger, then we can do better. And then that's one of the reasons why my wife, she was so strong at that time, so calm. And then she really, led the path in order to make it happen. And then my wife was born there downtown, a lot of people like around, and then a lot of people came, and then like evangelical people like praising God, and then people in the cars. And then I realized this would be like in the newspaper soon, because it was already a crowd there. And then we just, drove to the hospital as fast as we can, as we could. And the doctor was there. And eventually the doctor didn't charge a single dime because he said, "I have nothing to do here anymore. It's already done." And then Yara was born, and she's the, beautiful, most beautiful gift that life gave us, alongside our other children. And our point is, so this is psychedelic parenthood. We're not drugging children. You're not giving psychedelics to children. It's not about that. It's about being part of a community, respect ourselves, being respected, ritualize life. It's about purpose. It's about also bonds of solidarity. So at that time, my wife and I, we were together. We were connected. We were not, complaining against each other. And so this is something I carry deep in my heart as a very special moment.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that experience and that story. All three of your children, beautiful gifts, and particularly that image I've got, Glauber, of driving from your home an hour and a half to the hospital. And in that car, you and your wife created a sacred space that was strong from an energetic perspective, that was filled with joy and connection to ancestors. and yeah, it just kept you safe and kept you connected, and then you got there, and then wow, um, amazing. And yeah, I think, we could talk about sacred space in within our family. Like the family itself is a sacred space. True, relationships and connecting meaningfully with each other. It's really hard to often do that, like to truly meet people for who they are, for who I am, for really being in this moment here and not being stuck in our heads and not being thinking about what happens next or what am I supposed to say, what am I supposed to do. And I think that's where song can be really beautiful. So before we pressed record, Glauber, you said you've got a song that you've written that you've been working on.
And now we are living challenging times, also regarding psychedelic research and the future of this field. But there is this beautiful lesson, and that is related to something that is interesting, very interesting. First is something that Davi Kopenawa, the indigenous shaman, told me. It's recovering our ability to dream, and children can really support us in that. But second, it's also about changing the past and remembering the future, which seems a little strange, right? But changing the past in order our stories, when we take psychedelics, we can reinvent them, reinterpret them, and then we can also take into account other narratives, other perspectives, see other things regarding, for example, the very history, the very past of our civilization. We can now talk about indigenous traditions, indigenous cosmovisions, and how they are still there here, how they are paving the way. So we can change the past, actually. Although people say we can't change, we can. And also, this can support us in remembering the future. That is this ability to dream, this ability to envision things, this ability to see the difference that we want to, live in the world and make it real, make it happen, instead of just, being, yeah, without any kind of hope, being just expecting what is going to be the next thing. We can be active in this. And something that really inspires me is are the indigenous perspectives about psychedelics, sacred plants, because indigenous peoples in general already lived the end of the world, and they are still here. So they know how to, they know how to resist. They know how to teach us how to build an ancestral future. And there is, just because I want to, if you allow me, I would love to share a song. And because music is something very important in psychedelic settings in general, but very especially in ayahuasca settings. Music creates the experience in ayahuasca as well. And the Awanawa people, they have a very special spiritual lesson, because in the face of the fear, in the face of death, singing and keep singing. That's the thing. In the face of the terror of darkness, we sing about the blue of the sky, the brilliance of the star, the purity of the waters, the green of the forest, the song of the birds. In the face of death, we sing about life. With some indigenous peoples, this theme, this topic sometimes comes up, the song that will never cease. So we can imagine indigenous peoples, all they've been through in terms of deaths, slavery, religious persecution, intolerance, that still affect them today. And suddenly they are in the middle of the yard, holding hands, singing under the starlight, saying, "This is our voice that will never be silenced." So victory over the past projects the victory over the future, and this is a huge power. So this is how we have sought to tell and spread the truth in times of lies and times of challenging. We keep singing, even to those who don't want to hear. So our commitment is first and foremost to the song, to cosmic music. So while in this time of crisis and difficulties, conflicts, illusions, and so on, stand in the way of our well-being. We continue to sing about the life that surrounds us, bringing back the smile of truth in our joyful and persistent determination. So this is the voice of the song that will never be silenced. I really like this perspective, and I would like to share a song about nature and about how we are also part of this cosmic dance of life. So this is a song from my tradition, the Santo Daime one, and that I wrote. And please forgive me because my voice is not really good today, but I will. I promise I will try my best. Examinando a magia da natureza, me espanto com tamanha beleza. Examinando a magia da natureza, me espanto com tamanha beleza que vem do alto do astral a terra, anunciando o som da nova era que vem do alto do astral a terra, anunciando o som da nova era. A abundância que transborda com a chuva das flores a natureza se desnuda. A abundância que transborda com a chuva nas flores a natureza se desnuda. O sol, astro imperial, onipotente, me faz lembrar que a vida é um presente. O sol, astro imperial, onipotente, me faz lembrar que a vida é um presente. E o mar, brilho azul, filho da lua, governa este planeta com ternura. E o mar, brilho azul, filho da lua, governa este planeta com ternura. A floresta com seu manto ornado, ouro verde, manancial de amor a todos seres. A floresta com seu manto ornado, ouro verde, manancial de amor a todos seres. Vou seguindo, agradecendo a mamãe, papai, por vossa bela criação. Vou seguindo, agradecendo a mamãe, papai, por vossa bela criação. Humilde, peço força às estrelas divinas pra dançar a grande dança da vida. Humilde, peço força às estrelas divinas pra dançar a grande dança da vida. Much gratitude.
Amazing. Thank you, Glauber. I was not expecting that today, and that might be the first time we've had some live music on the Psychedelics Today podcast. Beautiful. Wow.
Thank you for
So,
allowing me to.
yeah, it's what are we here for? We're here to talk, but sometimes talking can only go so far. Sometimes really listening and creating, like you were talking about creativity before, and a lot of what we're talking about is space holding and connecting with self. And yeah, music has that beautiful piece, and singing as well. My wife is a singer. I know you've met, but she's an amazing singer, and there's something incredible about music and song. I think especially when we're looking at ceremonial space holding. And I know, we've got a few more minutes to go, but one of the things that we've spoken about is, the psychedelic renaissance and psychedelic assisted therapy and the scientific clinical model. And that has like its Spotify playlists. And that's great. You can go far with that. And then we've got, ceremonial group practices that has live music, and it can be felt. I think there's more like it goes through your body and soul more than just a Spotify playlist will. So maybe just as one of my final topics or questions, what is it about healing in groups or sharing sacred space with music, with sound, with ceremony that is so special, particularly in comparison to the psychedelic renaissance, psychedelic assisted therapy model where, it's clinical, medicalized, I am the patient, I am getting healed. What's different between these two models, in a sense, when we heal in groups, when we're part of this collective container?
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah, so I think this is a very deep and important question. And yes, and also just to express all my solidarity to all the people who are looking for healing and still don't have like a full legal landscape for psychedelic assisted therapy in the whole world. So I'm completely supportive to all the efforts that dozens of people are doing, not only in the US but in other countries as well, to make this possibility, these therapies, accessible and legal to other people. So I really support this. And making this clear, I also do believe that it's good for us to think about other possibilities as well, to think about other perspectives as well. So when we are talking about music and ceremonies or music and ayahuasca, in ayahuasca music, it's the language of the spirits. So there are musics, there are songs to open the session, there are songs to close the session, there are songs to bring healing, there are songs to calm down everything. There's songs to bring the energy of the fire. So it's also a very special tool of communication. So I would say that something that is very unique to the collective ceremonial experience is these amazing possibilities of working with different languages. So it's also a matter of understanding that communication, as you mentioned, that you already brought this insight to me now, that talking it's just one among many other languages that are possible. And we know that we have also other senses. So, for example, when we are talking about the visionary aspects of the psychedelic experience in the West, this can be something very, very, very central. So central that we also sometimes forget about other senses, other possibilities as well. For example, smell. So, fragrances can be really supportive in the psychedelic space. So, for example, just to mention one example, the Shipibo indigenous tradition, they use agua florida like this. So they're going to put just a little bit, for example, in their hands, or they're going to have a soplada, or they're going to heal with fragrances, with smelling, the smell of the environment. So this can also heal. This can also help us. So it's, I think, a very interesting reflection is about expanding our tools, expanding our trainings in order to be skilled enough to use other languages as well. So music can be very important. Fragrances can be very important. Smudging can be something very important as well. But also the community, this sense of the collective mind, the collective spirit, emerging in a village when we are dancing together. So body is also language. So dancing in many psychedelic traditions, dancing can be a very central aspect of it. So I would say that it's really good to talk about different settings, different traditions, different cultures, because they are all singular. They are all unique. There's no such a thing like the perfect universal medical protocol. So it's good, to be open, to open our hearts to these beautiful possibilities of creating relationships with plants. So when we regarding ayahuasca again, because we talked a lot about ayahuasca today, when you prepare ayahuasca with your own hands, so you saw that leaves, you build a relationship with that leaves, and then you are going to ingest them. They are going to support you, and so this bring another level of relationship. So I do believe that ceremonial context, and also we have a huge discussion about that, how to practice reciprocity, how to build bonds of respect with traditions and indigenous wisdom, how to avoid consumerism, commodification, and cultural appropriation. This is a whole and important debate. Also, to bring abuse as something really complicated that exists and that can happen. So, how to fight, abuse, sexual abuse, and other kinds of abuse in this field and these settings as well. And but there's something very beautiful about the ceremonial aspect, or the collective, or the ritual, or the cultural aspect of consuming psychedelics in a tradition, in a safe ceremonial space. That is this sense of a collective thing happening. So this brings many things. Among them, this brings the discussion about how setting is something very, very important, how community is something central, how culture is important too. When we are talking about scientific research, methodology is something that we can't avoid. Theoretical frame is also something important. And when we are talking about experiences with psychedelics, there is no such a thing that as an experience without culture. So everyone and every setting brings a culture. What kind of culture is this one? So how related to indigenous traditions is that? So this discussion about culture setting, but especially community, and especially also exploring different possibilities that we have as human beings. So that's why I brought Agua Florida, and why we can talk about music and another possibilities as well is very important, because if you really want to take seriously this idea of a resurgence or a renaissance, so we need to take seriously as well that we are just, co-creating something, or co-rescuing, or co-reviving something that existed for several centuries, millennium. And this is also an invitation to be creative, exploring. So that's why I really like this idea of that Ailton Krenak has. Ailton Krenak said two things, and I'm going to, yeah, to close this thought with these two ideas. One is, once they asked Ailton Krenak this question, "What do you think about ayahuasca?" The same question you asked ayahuasca being abroad and everything, and Ailton Krenak said this: they can invent a hallucinogenic brew called ayahuasca. They can invent a soda called ayahuasca. They can invent a gummy candy or whatever named ayahuasca. What? But if they don't know what the shaman, what the pajé talks to the plant, the only thing they're going to invent is a ticket to nowhere. So this brings this discussion about setting, culture, community, meaning. And this is something that ceremonies can bring and support us. And the other thing is about this concept of um, the ancestral future, that is on the same time we are creative, open, and free enough to think about possibilities, new possibilities, how to reinvent these containers, how to make people feel safer and everything. And this is very important. How to do better research, better scientific research, and everything, but without forgetting about ancestrality and about the sacred traditions that have been keeping these sacred plants and medicines protected for several years, several centuries actually.
This is a beautiful place to end it. Thank you, Glauber. We could go on for another hour, and I think we'll do some more here. One final thought I've got is, you've just opened up my mind to this word psychedelic renaissance. Like, is it an accurate word? But from now on, I think I'm going to say what that concept gives us is permission to reconceptualize the future, an ancestral future that doesn't just mean a medical, clinical psychedelic renaissance, that it actually includes resistance. It includes, a future that we get to build in a whole host of ways, not just one. Like, it's not this homogenous, it's heterogeneous. It's this really kind of multiplicity and diverse future that we get to create. So with that being said, as my final thought, I just want to say a huge thank you. We got to hear you sing, our children got to meet, and it's been an amazing conversation. So thank you, man. And tell people where they can find out more information about you and also your retreat and other work that you've got coming up, Glauber.
Amazing. Yes. Yeah, you remembered me of something very important, because these systems of knowledge, they don't need to be competitors. They don't need to be against each other. So there is a very special concept from a black philosopher from Brazil, that is the concept of confluence. It's like two rivers. They are different rivers, but they are all flowing to the same sea. They can still keep their differences, their different identities. So the biomedical model has a specific identity, a specific history, specific method, protocols, and everything. And the ancestral indigenous wisdom and knowledge has also a very unique history, background, and so on and so on. But they can, coexist. They can practice this confluence towards the same amazing sea of the psychedelic field of healing, of creating community. And this being said, it's so amazing how we can build these bonds of friendship. So you are there in Israel. I'm here in Santa Luzia, Brazil. People who are listening and watching us, they can be in the US or any place in the world, and we are still, being ourselves. And although we are unique, we are also together. We have also similarities. So I'm really grateful for being here. Thank you very much. And yeah, so I have now I'm involved with a couple of initiatives. One of them is Jornadas de Kura, that is a retreat center here in Brazil. So we are trying to co-create and to build a retreat center that can also bring education on sacred plants, on how to prepare these plants in a meaningful and respectful way, and how to learn from indigenous peoples and to raise indigenous voices. So this is an initiative I like very much, and also Psychedelic Parenthood community. That is an international community of parents and caregivers bonded by this shared existential condition of being parents and caregivers. So if you are interested, I invited you to send me a message, an email. So my email is glauber at psychedelicparenthood.org. So you can write it to me, and I'm also on all social media. So Glauber Lourdes, Glauber Loures. In Instagram, you can find me there, and also in LinkedIn, in case you're interested. And I would love to continue this conversation also in a horizontal way, because we can all teach and learn from each other. So this is something I love to share experiences. And if you are interested in being part of the psychedelic parenthood community, just let me know.
Hey. All right. Thank you, Glauber. This was a wonderful first time on the show, and I'm really looking forward to, much more, and especially as you're one of our teachers in Vital. So I'm really looking forward to learning with you and being horizontal as well. I really like that final thought that, we're kind of lying down in a way, but we're kind of just learning and sharing and growing, and we're all connected as well, basically. So thank you, man.
Thank you, David, very much. I appreciate also your work and the work that Psychedelics Today and Vital have been doing.
Hmm. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been a wonderful conversation with Glauber Assis and David Drapkin. God bless.